Have you ever wondered why understanding API attacks is crucial for a pen tester? APIs, or application programming interfaces, have become a cornerstone in today's digital world, powering everything from mobile applications to web services. With the rise in API usage, we're also seeing a corresponding increase in API-based attacks, making them a critical area of concern for pen testers. For a pen tester, understanding these attacks isn't just about ticking a box. It's about gaining an edge in the ongoing battle against cyber threats. When you know how API attacks work, you're better equipped to identify vulnerabilities, and more importantly, to prevent potential breaches. It's about staying a step ahead, understanding the attacker's mindset, and using that knowledge to secure systems and networks against these very attacks. In essence, mastering API attacks isn't just a skill, it's a necessity. The more knowledge a pen tester has on API attacks, the more efficient they become in identifying vulnerabilities and preventing potential breaches. Before delving into the specifics, it is essential to understand what API attacks are. In the realm of cybersecurity, an API, or application programming interface, is a set of protocols that allows different software applications to communicate with each other. API attacks, then, are malicious activities aimed at exploiting vulnerabilities within these interfaces. Among the most common types of API attacks, we have injection attacks. These occur when an attacker sends harmful data to an API, causing it to execute unintended commands. Then there's broken authentication, a crack in the system's defenses that allows unauthorized access. We also have excessive data exposure, where an API inadvertently reveals too much information, potentially leading to data breaches. Each of these attacks takes advantage of weaknesses in API design or implementation, posing significant threats to data security. Understanding these types of attacks is the first step in identifying and preventing them. Now that we are aware of what API attacks are, it is time to delve into how to identify them. Identifying API attacks is a bit like being a detective. You're looking for the unusual, the out of place, the not quite right. Let's break it down into a step-by-step guide. Step 1. Monitor for unusual API behavior. This is your first line of defense. Just as a shopkeeper watches for shoplifters acting suspiciously, you must keep an eye on your API's behavior. Is it suddenly processing an abnormally high number of requests? Is it responding slower than usual? These could be signs of an ongoing attack. Step 2. Check for unauthorized data access. This is akin to finding a stranger in your house. It's a clear sign something is wrong. In the digital realm, this could mean noticing that data is accessed from unusual locations at odd times or by unfamiliar users. If you see this, it's a red flag that an attack might be taking place. Step 3. Look for signs of excessive data exposure. Sometimes an API may be tricked into revealing more data than it should. For instance, an attacker might manipulate the API into returning a whole database instead of a single record. If you notice your API giving away too much data, it's very likely that you're under attack. But remember, these are just pointers. In the real world, things may not be as clear-cut. Attackers are always evolving their tactics, so you need to stay one step ahead. Constant vigilance, regular audits, and a thorough understanding of your API's normal behavior are your best weapons against API attacks. And that's it. Those are the 3 key steps to identifying API attacks. Monitor for unusual behavior, check for unauthorized data access, and look for signs of excessive data exposure. Being able to identify these signs is a crucial skill for any pen tester. So, sharpen your detective skills, keep your eyes open, and never stop learning. Because in the world of cybersecurity, the threats never stop evolving. Identifying potential threats is half the battle, the other half is preventing them. So, how do we go about preventing API attacks? The first line of defense is implementing strong authentication and authorization. This means ensuring that only authorized users can access your APIs. This is often achieved through techniques like token-based authentication, where a user is given a unique token after successfully logging in. This token is then used for subsequent requests, confirming the user's identity without requiring them to repeatedly input their credentials. But strong authentication and authorization are just the starting points. Another crucial preventive measure is limiting data exposure. This involves only providing the minimal amount of data necessary for a given operation. For instance, if a user requests information about a product, only the relevant details about that product should be returned, not the entire product database. This is often referred to as the principle of least privilege, and it's a fundamental concept in cybersecurity. Next on our list is input validation. This means checking or validating the data that's sent through your APIs. This can help prevent attacks that rely on sending malicious data like SQL injection attacks. By thoroughly validating your inputs, you can catch and reject any suspicious data before it can do any harm. And let's not forget about encryption. Encryption is a method of converting data into a code to prevent unauthorized access. By encrypting the data that's sent between your APIs and their users, you can ensure that even if the data is intercepted, it can't be read by anyone without the decryption key. Lastly, it's important to keep in mind that prevention isn't a one-and-done deal. It requires regular updates and patching of your APIs. As new vulnerabilities are discovered and new attack methods are developed, your APIs need to be updated to protect against these emerging threats. In conclusion, preventing API attacks isn't just about putting up a strong front line of defense. It's about being proactive, always staying one step ahead of potential threats and constantly working to improve your defenses. Preventing API attacks requires a proactive approach and continuous effort. In conclusion, understanding API attacks is a vital part of a pentester's toolkit. Let's take a moment to distill the essence of our discussion. We emphasize the significance of API attacks in the world of cybersecurity. These attacks, often subtle and sophisticated, can compromise systems and data, making them a critical area of focus for any pentester. We explored how to identify API attacks, stressing the importance of vigilant monitoring, understanding the patterns of normal API behavior, and recognizing the signs of potential breaches. Knowledge of common attack vectors like injection attacks, broken authentication, and excessive data exposure can be a real game changer. Finally, we delved into preventative measures. We highlighted the role of robust authentication mechanisms, rate limiting, and input validation in thwarting API attacks. We also underscored the importance of regular security audits and updates to keep your defenses strong. Remember, as a pen tester, your knowledge and skills in handling API attacks can be the difference between a secure system and a compromised one.